Rain hammered the stained glass windows of the Harrington estate like fists, striking a coffin lid. Ethan Vale stood in the center of the grand hall with blood running from the corner of his mouth. Around him, chandeliers blazed. Champagne glittered, silk dresses whispered. Every face in the room wore the same expression: amusement. His stepbrother, Damon Harrington, stood at the top of the marble staircase with one hand resting on the banister and the other holding a thick black folder. The inheritance documents. Mother made her decision before she died. Ethan stared at him. Mother. Damon had never called her that while she was alive. He had called her a gold-digging widow, a parasite, a common woman who had seduced his wealthy father. But now that her shares, properties, and private investment accounts were worth more than the Harrington family's dying empire, Damon suddenly called her mother. The guests laughed softly. Ethan looked toward his stepfather. Victor Harrington sat in a leather chair near the fireplace, turning a glass of brandy in his hand. He did not meet Ethan's eyes. Beside him sat Celeste, Damon's biological mother, dressed in mourning black despite having spent the entire funeral reception smiling. She lifted a handkerchief to her lips. Ethan, she said gently, your grief has made you irrational. Damon is only trying to protect the family. Protect the family. The phrase almost made Ethan laugh. 3 nights earlier, Ethan had found his mother's original will, hidden inside a locked compartment in her study. It named him as the sole beneficiary of her private fortune. Not Damon, not Victor, not the Harrington family. Him. By sunrise, the document had vanished. By noon, Damon's lawyers had produced a different will, one bearing Ethan's mother's signature, one leaving everything to a family trust controlled by Damon. Ethan had confronted them. They had called him unstable. He had demanded an investigation. They had brought witnesses, servants, doctors, attorneys. Every one of them had been purchased. Every one of them had sworn that Ethan's mother had distrusted him, that she feared his reckless spending, that she believed Damon was the only son capable of preserving her legacy. Ethan had never spent recklessly in his life. Damon had lost fortunes in casinos, private clubs, and fraudulent ventures. None of that mattered. The truth was weak. Money had strangled it before it could scream. Damon descended the staircase slowly. Each polished shoe struck the marble with deliberate contempt. You have no proof, he said. Ethan's gaze fell to the black folder. You forged her signature. A ripple of mockery passed through the hall. Damon stopped one step above him. And yet, every expert says it is authentic. You, Ethan, can you prove that you threatened her nurse? Can you prove that? You paid the driver who entered her study the night she died. Damon leaned closer, his smile widened. Can you prove that? Ethan said nothing. Damon's eyes shone. He was enjoying this. Not merely the victory, the helplessness. He wanted Ethan to understand that justice had never existed. Only power, only ownership, only the ability to make lies more expensive than truth. Damon lowered his voice. You should have accepted the apartment I offered you. That apartment belonged to my mother. Not anymore. You stole everything. Damon's smile became almost tender. No, I inherited everything. Ethan's fist tightened. 2 security guards stepped forward at once. Damon noticed. He laughed. There it is. The poor little orphan finally shows his teeth. Celeste sighed from across the hall. Please, Ethan, do not make this uglier than it already is. Ethan turned toward her. She had been inside his mother's hospital room during her final hour. She had held his mother's hand. She had promised to care for him. Then she had ordered the servants to throw his belongings onto the street before the body was cold. Ethan looked back at Victor. His stepfather finally raised his eyes. For a brief moment, something resembling shame moved across the old man's face. Then Damon spoke. Father. Victor's shame vanished. He hardened. This family has tolerated enough. He said, you will surrender your access cards, your vehicles, and every company device in your possession. Ethan felt something inside him go still, not break. Breaking implied pain. This was colder. A blade sliding into place. My mother saved your company, Ethan said. Victor's jaw tightened. She invested when every bank rejected you. Enough. She sold her childhood home to cover your debts. I said enough. She spent her last years cleaning up Damon's failures. Damon stepped down. His fist struck Ethan's stomach. Air exploded from Ethan's lungs. Before he could straighten, Damon grabbed his hair and forced him to his knees. Gasps filled the hall. Not horrified gasps. Phones appeared. Guests began recording. Damon bent close to Ethan's ear. "Look around," he whispered. "These people attended your mother's funeral, and not one of them cares what happens to you." Ethan's knees pressed against the cold marble. A servant approached carrying a silver tray. On it rested a pen. Damon placed the black folder on a nearby table and opened it. A waiver, a confession. A statement declaring that Ethan had fabricated accusations against the Harrington family due to emotional instability. Beneath it was another document, a transfer agreement surrendering his remaining minority shares. Damon pushed the pen into Ethan's hand. "Sign." Ethan looked at the pages. "If I refuse." Damon nodded toward the doors. 2 police officers entered. Behind them stood a woman with bruises painted across her face. Ethan recognized her. Lena Price, a former assistant at one of the family companies. He had spoken with her once. Only once. She would not look at him. Damon smiled. "Miss Price has accused you of assault." Ethan's fingers curled around the pen. The room blurred for half a heartbeat. Not from fear, from understanding. They had prepared everything. The forged will, the paid witnesses, the false accusation, the police, the cameras. They did not merely want his inheritance. They wanted his name buried with his mother. Damon crouched in front of him. "You can sign, leave quietly, and keep whatever dignity you have left." Ethan looked into his stepbrother's eyes. "And if I sign, she withdraws the accusation. Perhaps. You will still destroy me." Damon chuckled. "Of course." The guests laughed again. Something warm ran down Ethan's hand. He had gripped the pen so tightly that its metal edge had cut his palm. A drop of blood landed on the transfer agreement. Damon's expression turned vicious. He struck Ethan across the face. The second blow split Ethan's lip. The third knocked him onto the floor. One of the guards kicked him in the ribs. Then another. Shoes crashed into his back, his stomach, his shoulders. The grand hall filled with music. Someone had told the orchestra to continue playing. Violins rose above the sound of flesh being beaten. Ethan curled around his head as Damon's heel drove into his spine. "Your mother should have left you nothing," Damon snarled. "Kick." "She should have drowned you at birth." Another kick. "You were never one of us." Ethan tasted blood. Through the forest of polished shoes, he saw his mother's portrait hanging above the fireplace. She looked young in the painting, calm, hopeful, alive. He remembered her sitting beside him in the small apartment they had lived in before she married Victor. She had taught him how to read company reports using grocery receipts. She had shown him how debt could disguise itself as growth, how confidence could hide desperation, how the most valuable opportunities often look disgusting to people obsessed with appearances. Markets reward patience, she had told him, but people reward performance. Never confuse the two. He had been too young to understand. Now he understood everything. His mother had not merely left him money. She had left him a way of seeing. And Damon had stolen the money because he could never steal the vision. A final kick struck Ethan's temple. Darkness swallowed the hall. He woke beneath an overpass. Cold rain struck his face. His suit had been torn. His wallet was gone. His phone was shattered beside him. Someone had dumped him among bags of rotting garbage. For a long time, Ethan did not move. Traffic roared above. Dirty water flowed around his fingers. Every breath stabbed his ribs. His left eye had swollen shut. Somewhere in the distance, a billboard displayed Damon's face beside the announcement of his new position as chairman of the Vale Harrington Investment Group. Vale, Ethan's mother's name. Damon had stolen that, too. The billboard called him a visionary, a brilliant young leader, the guardian of a historic legacy. Ethan stared until his vision trembled. Then he laughed. It came out broken, wet, almost silent. A homeless man sleeping nearby stirred and looked at him with fear. Ethan's laughter continued. Not because anything was funny, because the last illusion inside him had finally died. Family, law, loyalty, reputation, all decorations placed over the same machine. Capital entered. Power came out. Damon understood half of that equation. He believed possession was power. He believed money already stolen was money safely owned. He believed the world was a banquet and Ethan had been thrown beneath the table. Ethan pushed himself upright. Pain ripped through his chest. His hand touched the concrete. Blood from his palm smeared across the ground. A cold voice sounded inside his skull. Extreme financial injustice detected. Ethan froze. The rain seemed to slow. A pale blue light appeared before his eyes. It hovered in the air, invisible to everyone else. Post-suitability confirmed. The homeless man cursed and crawled away. Ethan stared at the light. Words formed within it. God-tier investor system awakening. His heartbeat slowed. Not quickened, slowed. He had spent his entire life around predators wearing tailored suits. He knew that anything offering power demanded a price. "What do you want?" he asked. The voice answered immediately. "Profit." Ethan smiled. A thin line of blood ran across his teeth. "What do I receive?" "Access to hidden market intelligence." More words appeared. Opportunity evaluation, risk composite detection, behavioral prediction, capital multiplication rewards. Post-actions will generate investor points when profitable decisions exceed system benchmarks. A translucent panel unfolded. It showed the Harrington Group, its subsidiaries, its debts, its concealed liabilities, its upcoming acquisitions, its secret loans, its bribed auditors, its offshore accounts. Ethan's good eye narrowed. The information was impossible. Private contracts he had never seen. Shell corporations buried beneath layers of false ownership. Damon's personal trades, Victor's collateral agreements, Celeste's hidden withdrawals. Every artery of the family empire lay exposed before him, and most of those arteries were clogged. The Harrington fortune was not healthy. It was a corpse preserved by expensive perfume. One serious shock would make the flesh fall away. A new message appeared. Initial privilege granted. Post may inspect one target asset, absolute depth. Ethan did not hesitate. Harrington Group. The world vanished. He stood inside a cathedral made of numbers. Balance sheets rose like pillars. Debt agreements hung like chains. Contracts twisted through the air like veins. Every future possibility branched before him. A property collapse. A banking investigation, a currency crisis, a commodity spike, a scandal involving Damon. A single small logistics company appeared at the center of it all. North Star Cold Storage. Ugly, burdened in debt, mocked by analysts. Its warehouses were old. Its founder was desperate. Its stock was about to collapse. But behind that collapse waited something enormous. A patent, a government contract, a supply crisis, a chain reaction that would multiply its value beyond reason. The Harrington Group planned to short the company into bankruptcy. Damon intended to profit from its death. The system revealed the truth. If North Star survived the next several months, it would become the most valuable cold chain network on the continent. If Ethan acquired enough control before the reversal, he could build a fortune. And if he allowed Damon to deepen his short position first, that fortune would be carved directly from his stepbrother's bones. The vision ended. Rain crashed down again. Ethan sat beneath the overpass, bruised and penniless. Yet, the cold no longer reached him. A final message appeared. Starter capital issued. A banking notification floated before his eyes. The amount was small. Insultingly small compared to the inheritance Damon had stolen. But Ethan saw what Damon could not. Money was not power. Information was power. Timing was power. Knowing exactly where a man would place his foot before removing the ground beneath him was power. Ethan rose. His body shook. His smile did not. He looked toward the distant billboard. Damon's enormous face watched over the city. Confident, clean, untouchable. Ethan wiped the blood from his mouth. He would not expose the forged will. Not yet. He would not beg the police. He would not appeal to the board. He would not warn the regulators. Those were weapons for men who wanted justice. Ethan wanted ownership. He wanted every bank to call Damon's loans, every partner to abandon him, every servant to laugh as he was dragged from the estate. He wanted Celeste to sell her jewels for food. He wanted Victor to watch the family name disappear from every tower they had built. He wanted Damon conscious for every second of the collapse. A taxi slowed near the curb. The driver looked Ethan over and nearly pulled away. Ethan stepped forward and opened the door. "Where to?" the driver asked suspiciously. Ethan looked once more at the billboard. "To the cheapest public library in the city." The driver frowned. Ethan leaned back against the seat. Behind his swollen eye, markets unfolded like battlefields. Companies became fortresses. Debt became poison. Greed became a leash. Damon had stolen an inheritance. Ethan would let him enjoy it. He would let him spend it, leverage it, boast about it, build a golden throne over a pit he could not see. Then Ethan would close his hand. He imagined Damon kneeling on the same marble floor. He imagined those elegant guests lowering their phones. He imagined the silence when they realized the orphan they had mocked now owned the air they breathed. Ethan's smile deepened. He would not drag his family to hell. That would be too merciful. He would build the road, polish it, cover it in red velvet. Then he would stand at the end and welcome them one by one. The public library smelled of dust, wet coats, and forgotten ambition. Ethan sat beneath a flickering lamp with a cracked computer in front of him. His ribs screamed whenever he breathed. His left eye remained swollen. His suit had dried into a stiff shell stained with blood and gutter water. People avoided the table. Good. He needed silence. The god-tier investor system hovered beyond his vision. Northstar Cold Storage pulsed in pale blue. A dying company, a perfect corpse. Damon's analysts had already circled it like vultures. The Harrington Group had borrowed heavily to build a short position. Through offshore funds, private derivatives, and hidden counterparties. If Northstar collapsed, Damon would earn enough to boast for years. If Northstar survived, the losses would tear through every layer of his empire. Ethan opened the company's public filings. The system marked each lie. Equipment depreciation overstated. Land value concealed. Patent ownership disguised through subsidiaries. Founder under coercive debt pressure. Primary lender preparing forced liquidation. Ethan's eyes moved calmly across the screen. The founder was named Marcus Voss, a brilliant engineer, a terrible politician. Northstar's new refrigeration process consumed almost no conventional coolant. It preserved biological products far longer than current industrial systems. The patent could transform hospitals, food networks, research laboratories, and military supply chains. Yet, no one cared. The company's warehouses looked ancient. Its profits had collapsed. Its stock had become a joke. Damon had made sure of that. Paid analysts called Northstar fraudulent. Business channels mocked Marcus on air. Suppliers demanded cash in advance. The Harrington Group had quietly purchased Northstar's debt. They planned to seize the patents after bankruptcy. Damon believed he was about to steal another inheritance. This time from a stranger. Ethan smiled. Predictable men were easier to ruin than foolish ones. He created a new investment account using the starter capital. The amount would not impress anyone. That was the point. Large movements attracted eyes. Small movements built traps. The system displayed a row of distressed securities tied to Northstar common shares. Convertible notes, supplier claims, warehouse liens, employee compensation debt, a forgotten insurance settlement. Ethan ignored the shares, too obvious. He purchased the insurance claim through an abandoned secondary marketplace. Then he bought a fraction of a supplier note, then another, then a bundle of unpaid employee obligations offered by a desperate collections firm. Each asset looked worthless alone. Together, they formed a narrow legal path into Northstar's creditor negotiations. The system chimed. First profitable structure identified. Investor points awarded. A warmth passed through Ethan's skull. New layers of data unfolded. He could now see probability shifts in real time. Not the future. Something more useful. Human weakness translated into percentages. Marcus Voss would reject direct investment. He would suspect manipulation. He would refuse to sell the patent. He would endure humiliation until the final moment. But he would accept help if it appeared to protect his workers rather than himself. Ethan leaned back. Pride disguised as loyalty. Assessment front confirmed. By sunrise he had drafted a proposal, not an acquisition, not a rescue, a creditor protection arrangement. He would purchase Northstar's most dangerous short-term obligations, delay enforcement, and secure a conditional right to invest later. No board seat, no public announcement, no control. Nothing that would frighten Marcus. Everything that would place Ethan's fingers around the company's heart. He sent the offer through a newly registered entity. Vale Meridian Partners. His mother's name came first. The Harrington name appeared nowhere. Then he waited. Not idly. He searched for a place to sleep. The cheapest room he found sat above a closed butcher shop. In a district respectable people pretended did not exist. The landlord stared at his ruined suit. Cash in advance. Ethan transferred the money. The landlord checked his phone twice. No guests, no noise. No trouble. Ethan walked past. Trouble is expensive. The room contained a narrow bed, a rusted sink, and a window facing a brick wall. It was enough. He removed his jacket and examined the bruises across his body. Purple, black, yellow at the edges. Damon had left his signature everywhere. Ethan pressed the towel against his split lip. His reflection watched him from a cracked mirror. He remembered Damon's heel crushing his spine. He remembered the guests laughing. He remembered Celeste's gentle voice. Protect the family. His phone vibrated. A reply from Northstar. Rejected. Ethan read it once. Then he smiled. The system's probability had predicted this. Marcus needed to reject help before desperation made acceptance feel like his own decision. Ethan slept for less than an hour. When he woke, Northstar's primary lender had issued a default notice. The news spread before the markets opened. Damon appeared on a financial program wearing a navy suit and a charitable expression. Northstar is a tragic example of what happens when ego replaces discipline, he said. The interviewer nodded eagerly. Damon continued. Some companies should be allowed to fail. Protecting investors means refusing to reward incompetence. Ethan watched from the room above the butcher shop. On screen, Damon looked polished, reasonable, merciful. The system exposed his hidden trades beside his face. His offshore fund had increased the short position again. He was betting not only on bankruptcy. He was betting on annihilation. Ethan sent Marcus a second message. No new offer, only a list of employee medical accounts that would be frozen if the lender seized Northstar's cash reserves. Then he closed the laptop. Marcus called before noon. His voice was rough. Who are you? Someone purchasing your obligations. Why? Because they are cheap. You expect me to believe this is charity? No. Silence. Marcus breathed heavily. You bought claims belonging to my workers. I bought claims that were already being sold. You are using them to pressure me. If I wanted to pressure you, their accounts would already be frozen. Marcus said nothing. Ethan continued. I will defer enforcement. Your workers keep their medical coverage. Your company receives breathing room. And in return, the right to match any future financing offer. That is all for now. Marcus laughed bitterly. There is always more. Yes. The honesty stopped him. Ethan heard papers shifting. You sound young. You sound tired. You know nothing about me. I know you mortgaged your home to cover payroll. I know your chief financial officer has been sending private documents to a Harrington subsidiary. I know your lender intends to seize the refrigeration patents through a shell company before the end of the quarter. The line became silent. Not quiet. Dead. Marcus finally whispered. How do you know that? It does not matter. You expect me to trust you? No. Then what do you expect? For you to hate Damon Harrington more than you distrust me. Marcus inhaled sharply. Ethan ended the call. An hour later, the agreement arrived, signed. The system chimed again. Hidden leverage acquired. Investor points awarded. Fraud detection upgraded. The world sharpened. Ethan saw deception everywhere. False pricing. Circular invoices. Invented customers. Companies bleeding through contracts no auditor understood. The city no longer looked like steel and glass. It looked like a wounded animal covered in parasites. He began feeding. A construction supplier had hidden valuable land beneath a failing equipment division. Ethan bought its debt before the land sale became public. A medical startup was about to lose a lawsuit. Everyone assumed it would win. He purchased insurance against its collapse. A shipping company faced rumors of bankruptcy. Yet its vessels had already been secretly leased at record prices. He acquired options through small accounts scattered across different platforms. Each trade was precise. Each profit fed the next. The starter capital doubled, then doubled again. Then grew beyond what any ordinary investor could produce without attracting suspicion. Ethan never celebrated. He never gambled. He never chased excitement. He treated money like ammunition. Counted, stored, fired only when the target could not move. Days passed. His bruises faded. His accounts expanded. Vale Meridian Partners remained invisible. No office, no employees, no public history. Only a web of legal entities, creditor rights, quiet contracts, and accumulating control. Damon, meanwhile, became louder. He announced a luxury headquarters renovation. He purchased a private aircraft. He hosted a charity banquet at the Harrington estate in honor of Ethan's mother. The invitation described Damon as the guardian of her vision. Ethan read the announcement while eating cold noodles from a paper carton. His hand paused. The system detected an emotional spike. Post-decision quality may be affected. Ethan set down the fork. Noted. He did not tear the invitation. He did not curse. He opened Damon's latest disclosures. The renovation was financed with borrowed funds. The aircraft was leased through a company already struggling to meet payments. The charity banquet was funded by an account meant to cover pension obligations. Damon was not spending wealth. He was burning structural supports and calling the flames sunlight. Ethan purchased credit protection against the aircraft lessor. Then he bought the pension fund's distressed claims through an intermediary. Every act of vanity tightened another chain. Damon believed applause meant safety. Ethan knew applause was merely noise produced before a fall. Northstar continued to deteriorate publicly. Its stock sank. Its factories reduced shifts. Its founder refused interviews. Damon's short position expanded. Financial commentators praised his foresight. One called him the executioner of failed companies. Another predicted Northstar would disappear within weeks. Ethan allowed the story to spread. Then he contacted Marcus. Closed the Western warehouse. Marcus erupted. That facility contains our prototype line. It also loses money. We need it for the demonstration. No, you need everyone to believe you need it. Marcus fell silent. Ethan sent him a restructuring plan. Sell the building to a shell company controlled by Vale Meridian. Lease it back at a symbolic rate. Move the patent ownership into a protected subsidiary. Publicly announce production cuts. Privately complete the prototype. Marcus read the plan. This will make us look weaker. Our stock will collapse. Yes. Harrington will attack harder. Yes. Marcus exhaled. You want him to? Ethan looked at Damon's smiling face on another financial broadcast. I want him comfortable. The plan began. Northstar announced the warehouse sale. Markets panicked. Analysts declared surrender. Damon appeared before cameras and laughed. This is exactly what I predicted. Behind the scenes, his funds borrowed more. The short position became monstrous. Too large to exit quietly, too entangled to unwind without triggering panic. The system displayed a crimson thread connecting Damon's personal fortune, the Harrington Group, multiple family trusts, and several banks. One pull would tighten the entire knot. Ethan waited. The prototype test approached. Northstar's process would be demonstrated before a private government committee seeking emergency cold chain technology. If successful, the contract would guarantee years of revenue. If revealed early, Damon might escape. So, Ethan created a distraction. He leaked evidence that one of Northstar's older facilities had failed a minor inspection. The report was real. The violation was harmless. The headlines were savage. Northstar safety crisis deepens. Bankruptcy now inevitable. Damon celebrated by increasing his short position one final time. At the Harrington estate, he raised a glass before investors. To discipline capital, he said. The room applauded. Ethan watched through a live broadcast. Then the system flashed. Enemy commitment threshold exceeded. Exit probability approaching zero. A cold satisfaction settled over him. The poison had been offered. Damon had not merely drunk it. He had seized the cup with both hands and demanded more. That night, Marcus called from the prototype facility. His voice trembled. Not with fear, with disbelief. It worked. Ethan closed his eyes. How long did the preserved samples remain stable? Far beyond the contract requirement. And energy consumption lower than projected. Has the committee signed? They issued a confidential letter of intent. The system flooded Ethan's vision. Northstar's hidden valuation multiplied. Government procurement, medical partnerships, food distribution, patent licensing, international demand. The dying company had become a sleeping giant, and Ethan owned the path through which it would awaken. Marcus laughed for the first time. Harrington is finished. Ethan's expression remained flat. No. He is only committed. Ethan opened a bottle of cheap water and drank slowly. Through the window, the brick wall across the alley glistened beneath the rain. He imagined Damon inside the estate. Silk curtains, crystal glasses. His mother's portrait hanging above a room full of thieves. Marcus spoke carefully. When do we announce? Not yet. He is still shorting us. I know. We have enough proof to destroy him. No. What more do you want? Ethan looked at the system panel. Damon's empire still possessed assets, friends, political protection, emergency credit. Enough to survive a painful loss. Ethan did not want pain. He wanted extinction. Let him borrow against the inheritance, Ethan said. Marcus went quiet. Let him pledge the estate. Let him pledge the company. Let him convince every arrogant friend he has to join the trade. That could take time. And when he has risked everything, Ethan smiled into the dark room. Then we open the market. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Inside the Harrington estate, Damon raised another toast to Northstar's death. He did not know the company had already survived. He did not know its patents had been moved beyond his reach. He did not know its debts were slowly gathering in Ethan's hands. He did not know every dollar he borrowed was being recorded, mapped, measured, prepared. Ethan reopened the invitation to his mother's memorial banquet. At the bottom was a handwritten note from Damon. A final insult. You are welcome to watch from outside. Ethan folded the invitation carefully. Then he placed it beside his growing portfolio. He would arrive not as a guest, not as family, not as the beaten orphan they had thrown into the rain. He would arrive as the owner of the knife already pressed against their throats. Until then, he would remain invisible. He would let Damon perform. Let Celeste smile. Let Victor pretend the family was stronger than ever. The sweetest poison was the one the victim mistook for victory. And Damon had just swallowed enough to drown an empire. The cheapest office in the financial district had no view. Its windows faced the concrete wall of another tower. Its carpet smelled faintly of dust and old coffee. Its reception desk had been purchased from a bankrupt dentist. Ethan signed the lease without negotiation. The landlord mistook his indifference for desperation. That mistake saved Ethan money. Vale Meridian Partners moved in before sunrise. There was no brass sign, no public launch, no smiling employees carrying boxes for reporters. Only Ethan, 3 laptops, a locked steel cabinet, and enough capital to begin building something no one could see. The God-tier investor system unfolded across the bare walls in layers of pale light. Companies, warehouses, freight routes, insurance contracts, medical suppliers, agricultural networks. Northstar sat at the center like a frozen heart. Ethan did not intend to save one company. He intended to build an empire around the crisis Northstar would create. The new refrigeration technology would not merely increase profit. It would break old supply chains. Businesses built on waste would collapse. Regions dependent on fragile transport would become desperate. Hospitals would compete for preservation capacity. Governments would demand priority. Food distributors would fight to survive. Everyone would need Northstar. Northstar would need infrastructure. Infrastructure would need capital. Ethan would own the capital. He began with the Western Warehouse. Publicly, the building had been sold to cover losses. Privately, Ethan stripped away every weakness. The roof was replaced. The loading bays were reinforced. Independent generators were installed beneath false utility plans. Security systems appeared behind ordinary walls. Cold chambers expanded underground. A private data center was built beneath the old maintenance floor. No contractors saw the full design. Each crew handled only a fragment. One installed ventilation. Another poured reinforced concrete. Another wired surveillance. Another assembled sealed rooms without knowing what would be stored inside. The final structure looked like a tired industrial warehouse. Inside it became a fortress. Marcus walked through the completed command chamber with his mouth slightly open. Rows of screens covered one wall. Private servers hummed behind reinforced glass. Northstar's prototype units operated in sealed bays, preserving blood, vaccines, tissue samples, seeds, rare compounds, and high-value food products. The energy draw was lower than an ordinary supermarket. Marcus touched the cold steel of a containment door. This place could survive a citywide blackout. It will. You expect one? I expect everything. Marcus looked at him. Ethan's bruises had vanished. His posture had changed. His suits were still simple, but now they fit with precise severity. Nothing about him appeared rich. Everything about him felt expensive. You built this in silence, Marcus said. Noise invites theft. And what happens when we announce the technology? We do not announce it. Marcus turned sharply. The contract is ready. The committee wants deployment. Hospitals are asking for demonstrations. They are asking because rumors have begun. You started those rumors. Yes. Then why hide? Ethan looked through the glass at the prototype chambers. Demand becomes obedience only after fear enters the room. Marcus frowned. Ethan sent him a report. Crop failures in several distant regions, a spreading livestock disease, port disruptions, a shortage of medical-grade coolant. None had become a crisis yet. Together they formed the outline of one. The system had not predicted fate. It had identified pressure. Ethan planned to decide where that pressure broke. "We wait," he said. Marcus read the report, his face tightened. "If these shortages strike, prices will rise, yes. Medical shipments will fail, yes. And then everyone will come to us." Ethan smiled faintly. "They will crawl." Marcus stared at him for a long time. "You are not building a company." "No. What are you building?" "A gate." Ethan's capital continued to grow. He bought failing transport firms no one wanted. Not the famous ones, the ugly ones. Refrigerated truck fleets buried in debt. Regional rail depots abandoned after corruption scandals. River terminals dismissed as outdated. Packaging factories with damaged reputations. Small software companies that track temperature fluctuations. Repair businesses specializing in obsolete cooling systems. Each acquisition looked irrational. Analysts would have mocked them if they had noticed. They did not notice. Ethan used separate entities, different attorneys, different lenders, different public stories. One buyer claimed to be a real estate fund. Another appeared to be a logistics turnaround firm. Another was registered as a medical research cooperative. Beneath the paperwork, every road led to Vale Meridian. The system rewarded structure. Supply chain dominance increased. Host control over critical nodes expanded. A new ability awakened. Synergy vision. The city transformed before Ethan's eyes. Assets no longer appeared alone. Lines of light connected them. A warehouse linked to a hospital. A rail depot linked to a farming district. A packaging plant linked to vaccine production. A struggling software company linked to every shipment moving through Northstar's future network. The ability showed not merely what an asset was worth. It showed what it could become when chained to another asset. Ethan spent entire nights connecting those chains. A bankrupt bottle manufacturer became a producer of sealed medical containers. A failed drone company became a last-mile delivery network for emergency supplies. A neglected rural bank became a source of loans for farmers who agreed to use Vale Meridian storage. A chain of cheap motels near freight corridors became dormitories for drivers and technicians. Nothing was wasted. Nothing remained what it had been. Damon still believed Ethan had nothing. That belief became a weapon. At the Harrington estate, Celeste hosted luncheons beneath Ethan's mother's portrait. She told guests that Ethan had disappeared after suffering a breakdown. She spoke of him with soft sadness. "We tried everything," she said. "But some people cannot survive responsibility." Victor remained silent during these performances. His health had begun to decline. The Harrington Group's debt was growing. Damon dismissed every warning. Northstar's apparent collapse had made him a market celebrity. Investors begged to join his next trade. Television hosts called him ruthless in the admiring way. Cowards praised men who had not yet lost. Damon enjoyed the word. Ruthless. He wore it like a crown. He created a private fund built around distressed corporate attacks. He borrowed against the inheritance, then against the estate, then against future distributions from family trusts. He persuaded Victor to guarantee several loans using Harrington Group shares. Celeste signed documents she did not read because Damon promised her a new coastal residence. Ethan watched every signature appear within the system. Each one became another stone in the tomb. He did not move against them. Not yet. Instead, he recruited people Damon would never value. The first was Lena Price, the woman who had accused Ethan of assault. She arrived at the office near midnight wearing a gray coat and terror across her face. Ethan sat behind the second-hand desk. No guards were visible. That frightened her more. She remained near the door. "You found me," she whispered. "You were not difficult to find. I had no choice. There is always a choice." Her lips trembled. "Damon threatened my brother." Ethan said nothing. "He controls the loan on our family home. He said he would send my brother to prison. He had documents, photographs. I did what he told me." "Yes. You watched them beat me." Tears filled her eyes. "Yes. You accepted payment." She lowered her head. "Yes." The room filled with quiet sobs. "Not beautifully. Not delicately. Her shoulders shook. Her breath broke. Ethan watched without expression. She had come expecting rage. Perhaps forgiveness. He offered neither. "What do you know about Damon's private funds?" he asked. Lena looked up. "I kept his records. Do you still have access?" "Some. Enough to trace his counterparties?" "Maybe. Enough to identify who helped forge the will?" Her face went pale. "I never saw the will." "That was not my question." Lena swallowed. "There was an attorney, a handwriting expert. Your mother's former nurse. Damon kept recordings in case they tried to demand more money." Ethan leaned back. "Where?" "I do not know." The system marked her words. No direct lies, only fear, shame, and a hidden detail. Ethan waited. Silence worked better than threats. Lena's breathing quickened. Finally, she whispered. "He stored encrypted copies through a private security company." Ethan slid a contract across the desk. She stared at it. "What is this? Employment?" She looked confused. "I helped destroy you." "You are hiring me?" "I am purchasing access to your guilt." Her face twisted. "That is cruel." "Yes." He offered no comfort. She signed. Lena became Vale Meridian's first analyst. Her desk stood in a windowless room. Her salary was several times what Damon had paid her. Her first assignment was to reconstruct the Harrington Group's hidden financial architecture. She worked like a prisoner digging toward daylight. Every file she found became another blade. The second recruit was Gabriel Stone, a former risk officer ruined after warning a bank about fraudulent collateral. The bank had fired him. Damon had mocked him publicly. Ethan found him repairing accounting software for small shops. Gabriel entered Vale Meridian suspicious and bitter. He left the first interview carrying authority over an expanding web of credit positions. The third was Mira Chen, an engineer whose cooling patent had been stolen by a prestigious research institute. Marcus wanted to hire her. Ethan gave her an entire laboratory. She asked what limits she had. "Physics," Ethan said. Her eyes brightened. Within weeks, she improved Northstar's system beyond its original design. Energy consumption fell again. Preservation stability rose. Compact units became possible. Hospitals could install them. Ships could carry them. Military convoys could deploy them. Homes could eventually afford them. Marcus stood beside Mira during the final test. For the first time, he did not behave like a wounded founder protecting his creation. He behaved like a disciple witnessing revelation. Ethan watched from behind the glass. The system chimed. Trash tier asset transformed into strategic class technology. Empire Foundation confirmed. More investor points flooded in. Ethan unlocked authority allocation. He could now grant limited system-enhanced insight to trusted subordinates. Not the system itself. Fragments. Marcus gained improved engineering evaluation. Mira gained accelerated design analysis. Gabriel gained deeper risk detection. Lena gained pattern recognition across hidden financial networks. Their performance changed overnight. They stopped working like employees. They moved like sharpened weapons. No one outside Vale Meridian understood why obscure professionals had suddenly become terrifyingly effective. That was intentional. The empire grew in darkness. Warehouses filled. Transport routes aligned, contracts multiplied. Medical suppliers signed exclusivity agreements. Farm cooperatives entered long-term storage deals. Research laboratories paid for confidential access. Foreign buyers offered absurd sums. Ethan rejected most of them. Scarcity increased desire. Desire increased surrender. He allowed a few carefully chosen clients into the network. A children's hospital received preservation units after losing critical medicine in a heat failure. A rural district saved an entire harvest during a transport disruption. A research center preserved a rare treatment that would otherwise have been destroyed. Each success remained officially isolated. Whispers spread. Vale Meridian became a name spoken quietly behind closed doors. Some believed it was a sovereign fund. Others believed it was a criminal consortium. A few claimed it did not exist. Ethan preferred the final theory. At the center of the western warehouse, he built a private chamber. One wall displayed every Harrington asset. The estate, the company, the trust, the aircraft, the coastal residence Celeste had ordered before construction began. Damon's fund, Victor's guarantees, the stolen inheritance. Beside each asset glowed a line showing how it could be seized, frozen, devalued, or turned against its owner. Lena entered carrying a black drive. Her face was colorless. I found the recordings. Ethan looked at the drive. The will, the forgery, the payments. Damon threatening the nurse. The handwriting expert demanding protection, and his mother's original document. Lena hesitated. There is a scan. For the first time in many months, Ethan's hand stopped moving. She placed the drive on the table. He knew it was real. She said he knew everything belonged to you. Ethan inserted the drive. His mother's signature appeared on screen. Clear, steady, authentic. Below it were the words naming Ethan as her sole heir. For one breath, the fortress disappeared. He saw the small apartment from his childhood. Grocery receipts spread across a kitchen table. His mother laughing when he misunderstood interest rates. Her tired hands, her patient voice. Then the memory closed. Ethan copied the files into a secure vault. Lena watched him. We can expose him now. No. Her face tightened. It proves he is a thief. Is that not enough? Ethan turned toward the wall of Harrington assets. He selected Damon's private fund. The crimson lines surrounding it had multiplied. Damon had convinced wealthy families, pension managers, and arrogant speculators to join the North Star short. His borrowed position had become larger than the liquid market. He could not escape without buying back shares at any price available. North Star's public float had quietly shrunk. Ethan controlled shares through creditors. Marcus controlled more. Employees held locked grants. Friendly institutions had accumulated positions under Vale Meridian's guidance. Very little remained for sale. A short squeeze would not injure Damon. It would devour him. Yet Ethan still waited. He wanted Damon's illusion to reach perfection. The memorial banquet approached. Damon announced it would also celebrate the acquisition of North Star's patents after bankruptcy. The deal did not exist. The lender no longer controlled the patents. North Star was not bankrupt. But Damon had promised victory so many times that he now treated fantasy as paperwork. Invitations went to bankers, politicians, reporters, celebrities, and every guest who had watched Ethan kneel on the marble floor. Celeste ordered his mother's portrait cleaned. Victor prepared a speech praising Damon as the true heir to the family legacy. Damon sent another note to Ethan through a private messenger. This one contained only a photograph. Ethan's old bedroom had been converted into a wine room. Across the image, Damon had written a sentence. Even your memories belong to me. Ethan studied the photograph. Then he handed it to Gabriel. Purchase the lender holding the estate mortgage. Gabriel blinked. The entire lender? Yes. That institution is larger than several of our subsidiaries. Not after tomorrow. The system had exposed a concealed liquidity crisis inside the lender. Vale Meridian acquired its distressed parent through a rapid chain of rescue financing, before the market understood what had happened. Ethan controlled the debt on the Harrington estate, the wine room, the marble hall, the portrait, every wall Damon believed eternal. Ethan placed the mortgage documents beside the banquet invitation. Marcus entered the chamber. The final government contract is signed. Mira followed him. The compact units passed every test. Gabriel placed a tablet on the desk. Our logistics network is ready. Lena added. The black drive and Damon's crimes are secured. 4 people stood before Ethan. A ruined founder, a stolen engineer, a disgraced risk officer, a guilty witness. Discarded people, trash assets. Damon would have laughed at every one of them. Now they formed the spine of an empire capable of freezing his world with a single command. Market opening sequence available. Public revelation will trigger extreme volatility. Enemy exposure is catastrophic. Proceed. He glanced at the banquet invitation. Not yet. The guests needed to arrive. The champagne needed to flow. Victor needed to praise his son. Celeste needed to smile beneath the portrait of the woman she betrayed. Damon needed to stand at the highest point of his stolen throne. Only then would the fall become perfect. Ethan selected a black suit from the wardrobe installed beside the chamber. Simple, severe, without decoration. Marcus smiled. You are going to the banquet. Ethan adjusted his cuff. I was invited to watch from outside. And will you? Ethan looked at the estate mortgage, then at the government contract, then at the proof of forgery. Finally, at the order that could awaken North Star and ignite the market. His smile was quiet, cold, absolute. No. He closed the invitation. This time they will watch me enter. The Harrington estate glowed against the night like a palace, refusing to admit it had already become a tomb. Black cars rolled through the iron gates. Valets opened doors. Politicians stepped onto the red carpet beside television hosts, bankers, fund managers, and socialites who measured human worth by invitation lists. Inside, crystal chandeliers burned above tables covered in white roses. A string orchestra played beneath Ethan's mother's portrait. Her painted eyes looked down on the people who had stolen everything from her son. Damon stood beneath that portrait in a white dinner jacket. He greeted each guest with the smile of a prince awaiting coronation. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the emblem of the Harrington Group beside North Star's logo. Across the bottom ran a triumphant message, celebrating the preservation of a great legacy. The lie was so large that no one questioned it. Celeste floated through the hall in black silk and diamonds. She touched arms, kissed cheeks, accepted condolences for a woman she had hated. Whenever someone mentioned Ethan, Celeste lowered her voice and looked toward the floor. "It still breaks my heart," she whispered. "We tried to help him." The guests nodded with practiced sympathy. Some remembered recording him as he bled on the marble. None felt ashamed. Victor sat near the fireplace. He looked older than he had at the funeral. His hands trembled around his glass. The Harrington Group's chief financial officer had called him repeatedly that afternoon. Victor had ignored every call. Damon had told him there was nothing to fear. North Star would collapse by morning. The short position would pay for everything. The estate renovation, the aircraft, the loans, the new fund, the coastal residence. The family would emerge richer than ever. Victor wanted to believe him. Belief was easier than examining the documents he had signed. Damon climbed onto the stage. The orchestra fell silent. Applause rolled across the hall. He spread his hands. "My friends, tonight is not merely a celebration." More applause. "It is the beginning of a new era." The screen behind him showed North Star's stock falling through another record low. Laughter moved through. For too long, weak companies have hidden behind sentiment. They have demanded rescue while destroying capital. They have called discipline cruelty. He smiled. "I call it responsibility." The guests applauded again. Celeste lifted her champagne. Victor forced a smile. Damon continued, "Tomorrow, North Star Cold Storage will enter final liquidation. Its useful assets will be acquired by the Harrington Group. Its failed management will be removed. Its patents will be placed in responsible hands." At the edge of the room, several bankers exchanged nervous glances. They had seen no signed acquisition. They assumed Damon knew something private. His confidence silenced their doubt. Confidence often did. Damon raised his glass. "To the future." The doors opened. Cold wind entered first, then Ethan. He wore black, no tie pin, no watch display for admiration. No visible jewelry, nothing softened the severity of his face. Conversation died in waves. Those nearest the entrance fell silent. Then the next group, then the next. Within moments, the entire hall had turned toward him. A woman dropped her glass. It shattered against the floor. Ethan walked across the red carpet without looking at anyone. The same guests who had laughed at his blood now moved aside instinctively. They did not know why. They saw no guards, no entourage, no public title. Yet the space around him felt occupied by something larger than a man. Damon stared from the stage for a heartbeat. His smile disappeared. Then he laughed. The room laughed with him too quickly, too loudly. Relief disguised as mockery. "Well," Damon said, "the lost orphan returns." Ethan stopped beneath the chandelier. His gaze moved over the room. The marble floor had been polished. No blood remained. He remembered exactly where his knees had touched it. Celeste approached with false concern. "Ethan." She opened her arms as though welcoming a wounded child. He looked at her. She stopped. Her hands remained suspended between them. "You should not be here," she whispered. Damon raised his voice. "I invited you to watch from outside." A few guests laughed. Ethan turned toward him. "I own the outside." The laughter weakened. Damon tilted his head. "What?" Ethan removed a folded document from his coat. He handed it to a nearby server. "Give this to Victor." The server hesitated. Victor's face tightened. "Bring it here." The document crossed the room. Victor unfolded it. His eyes moved across the first page, then the second. His glass slipped from his fingers. Brandy splashed over the carpet. Celeste hurried to him. "What is it?" Victor did not answer. Damon's voice sharpened. "Father." Victor looked at Ethan. "You purchased the mortgage." Ethan said nothing. Murmurs spread. Celeste snatched the document. Her eyes raced across the lines. "This is impossible." "No," Ethan said. "It was expensive." Damon descended from the stage. His smile returned, forced. "You bought a distress loan. Congratulations. That does not make you powerful." "No." Ethan glanced toward the walls. "It makes you tenants." The room became still. Celeste's face twisted. "This is our home." "It is collateral." Victor rose unsteadily. "We can refinance." "You try." The system had shown Ethan every rejected request, every emergency call, every lender unwilling to touch Harrington debt without additional security. Damon stepped closer. "You think owning one loan gives you leverage?" Ethan looked past him toward the screen. Northstar stock still bled downward. "No." A phone vibrated. Then another. Then dozens. Guests looked down. Bankers opened messages. Fund managers refreshed market feeds. The Harrington chief financial officer rushed through the side entrance, pale and sweating. "Damon." Damon turned with irritation. "What?" "We have a problem. Handle it." "It is Northstar." The screen behind the stage flickered. The falling stock chart vanished. A government seal appeared. Then a live announcement began. A procurement official stood before a row of cameras. Following successful trials, a strategic preservation contract has been awarded to Northstar Cold Storage and its infrastructure partner, Vail Meridian Partners. The hall froze. Marcus appeared beside the official. Mira stood on his other side. Behind them rested a compact refrigeration unit surrounded by medical containers. The official continued. "The technology demonstrated unprecedented efficiency and stability. Emergency deployment will begin immediately across hospitals, research centers, food networks, and national supply facilities." No one breathed. On the screen, reporters began shouting questions. Northstar's market price jumped, then jumped again. Trading halted. Damon stared upward, his mouth open. Nothing emerged. The chief financial officer grabbed his arm. "Our short position." Damon slapped his hand away. "Close it." "We cannot." "Then buy the shares." "There are no shares." "Find them." "The market is locked. Every available order is being taken." Damon's face hardened. "How much are we down?" The officer looked around the room. Too many people were listening. Damon seized his collar. "How much?" The answer came as a whisper. It was enough. The chief financial officer did not need to repeat it. Damon released him. His eyes widened. Several fund managers began making calls. One rushed toward the exit. Another demanded his driver. A banker cursed and overturned a chair. The people who had praised Damon's discipline suddenly remembered that they had invested beside him. Panic moved through the hall faster than fire. Northstar resumed trading. The price surged again. Harrington funds received margin demands. Lenders called collateral. Private investors demanded withdrawals. The screen split. On one side, Northstar climbed. On the other, Harrington Group shares collapsed. Damon snatched a phone from the chief financial officer. "Use the emergency credit line." It was suspended. By whom? The officer looked at Ethan. Everyone followed his gaze. Ethan stood calmly beneath his mother's portrait. Damon's lips trembled. "You?" Ethan smiled only slightly. The doors opened again. Gabriel Stone entered with representatives from several banks. Lena Price walked beside him carrying a black case. Behind them came attorneys, auditors, and regulatory officers. The room erupted. Guests pushed toward the exits. Security tried to restore order. No one listened. A woman screamed that her family trust was invested in Damon's fund. A politician tore off his Harrington donor badge. One banker struck another across the face after discovering he had been sold the same collateral. The elegant crowd began to fracture. Silk dresses tore against chairs. Champagne tables overturned. Men who had spent years smiling together now shouted accusations. Damon climbed back onto the stage. "Stop." No one stopped. Everyone remained calm. The word calm produced greater panic. Victor stared at the collapsing share price. "How much did you borrow?" Damon ignored him. Victor grabbed his sleeve. How much to win? We are not winning. Damon shoved him. Victor stumbled backward and struck the edge of a table. Celeste screamed. You pushed your father. He should have trusted me. He gave you everything. It was never enough. The words escaped before Damon could stop them. Victor looked at him from the floor. Something inside the old man finally understood. Not the market, not the debt. His son Damon had never intended to preserve the family. He had intended to consume it. Celeste rushed to Victor, then turned on Damon. You pledged my residence. You signed. You said it was a formality. You did not ask. Her face transformed. The gentle widow disappeared. She clawed at Damon's jacket. You worthless animal. Damon struck her. The sound cracked through the room. Celeste fell beside Victor. The guests stared. For years, the family had hidden its rot beneath manners. Now the skin split open. Damon stood over his parents, breathing hard. Then he looked at Ethan. This is your fault. Ethan's expression did not change. Damon pointed at the market. You concealed information. Northstar complied with every disclosure requirement. You trapped me. I gave you nothing. Damon descended from the stage. His steps became uneven. You knew. Yes. You knew the contract was coming. Yes. And you let me keep shorting. Ethan's smile deepened. You insisted. Damon lunged. Ethan's men in plain dark suits stepped from positions throughout the hall. They had been present from the beginning. Servers, drivers, technicians, guests. No one had noticed. Damon was seized before he reached Ethan. He struggled wildly. Let me go. No one obeyed. The market climbed again. Another margin demand appeared. Then another. Damon's private fund entered forced liquidation. Its assets began selling. Harrington shares crashed harder. The aircraft was seized at the airport. The coastal property entered foreclosure before its walls were complete. Accounts tied to Celeste were frozen. Victor's voting shares transferred under collateral enforcement. Every screen in the hall became a window into collapse. Damon watched his life disappear line by line. No, his voice was small then louder. No. He twisted against the guards. This is temporary. Gabriel approached Ethan. We have acquired controlling voting power. Ethan nodded. The board removed Damon effective immediately. The chief financial officer lowered his head. Victor closed his eyes. Celeste began sobbing. Damon laughed. A strange cracked laugh. You cannot remove me. I am Harrington. Ethan turned toward the portrait. No. He looked back at him. The room went silent. Even the phones seemed to stop. Damon's face emptied. The insult was simple. That made it unbearable. He had built his identity from titles. Chairman, visionary, executioner. Now Ethan had reduced him to nothing with one sentence. Lena opened the black case. Inside rested copies of payment records, recordings, forged documents, and the original will. Damon saw them. The last color drained from his face. Ethan took the original will. He did not raise it. He did not need to. You stole my mother's inheritance. Damon shook his head. The court recognized the will. The court saw forgery. You cannot prove it. Lena activated the first recording. Damon's own voice filled the hall, threatening the nurse, ordering the handwriting expert to imitate Ethan's mother, promising payment after the estate transferred. The guests turned toward him, not with moral outrage, but with fear. They wanted distance. The politicians moved first, then the bankers, then the socialites. People who had praised him moments earlier began denying friendship. One reporter started broadcasting live. Damon heard his own crimes echo beneath the portrait of the woman he had robbed. He stopped struggling. For the first time, he looked frightened. Not angry, not offended. Frightened. You planned all of this? He whispered. Ethan stepped closer. I only followed the opportunities you chose. The system flashed. Enemy control network destroyed. Strategic assets secured. Public authority confirmed. Outside, thunder broke over the estate. The lights flickered. Then every chandelier went dark. Guests screamed. Emergency power activated. Only the portrait wall remained illuminated. Ethan stood beneath it. Damon knelt before him, restrained by men he had never seen coming. Victor and Celeste remained on the floor. The crowd pressed against the walls. In the dim hall, their faces looked pale and hollow. They had watched Ethan kneel once. Now they understood the difference. He had been powerless then. Damon was powerless now. Marcus appeared on the screen behind Ethan as Northstar units restored power to a hospital grid during a regional outage. The crowd watched emergency wards blaze back to life. One machine, one command. A crisis crushed before it could grow. Ethan had not merely survived disaster. He had built the system that controlled who survived it. Damon stared at the screen, then at Ethan. The realization entered him slowly. The stepbrother he had thrown into the rain had not returned as a rival. He had returned as the owner of the market, the debt, the estate, the evidence, the technology, and the future. A god did not need to strike twice. The first blow had already landed. Everything else was the sound of the world collapsing around it. Dawn found the Harrington estate surrounded by black vehicles. Regulators occupied the study. Auditors sealed the accounting rooms. Bank representatives cataloged paintings, jewelry, wine, vehicles, and every object purchased with borrowed money. Reporters crowded beyond the gates. The red carpet from the banquet remained beneath their feet. Rain had soaked it dark. It looked less like fabric now, more like a river of old blood. Inside the grand hall, the chandeliers had been restored. Their light revealed everything cruelty had once hidden. Broken glasses, overturned tables, champagne mixed with mud, white roses crushed beneath expensive shoes. Damon sat on the marble floor with his wrists restrained in front of him. His white dinner jacket was torn. His hair hung across his forehead. The man who had welcomed investors as a prince now looked like a gambler discovered beneath the table after the casino closed. Victor occupied a chair near the fireplace. The same chair from which he had watched Ethan beaten. He had not moved for hours. Celeste knelt beside him. Her diamonds were gone. An officer had removed them as disputed assets. Without them, she looked smaller, older, almost ordinary. Ethan stood beneath his mother's portrait. No one ordered him to leave. No one asked him to lower his voice. No one dared interrupt when he spoke. Gabriel entered carrying a file. The emergency board meeting is complete. Ethan accepted it. The result? You have full control of the Harrington Group. The remaining directors approved the restructuring. Victor flinched. Celeste looked up. Damon laughed weakly. Those cowards. Gabriel continued. The family trusts are frozen pending fraud proceedings. The private fund has entered liquidation. Creditors are claiming the estate before noon. Celeste crawled toward Ethan. Not walking, crawling. Her hands slid over the same marble where his blood had once fallen. Please. Ethan looked down at her. Her face collapsed. We were afraid. Damon controlled everything. He threatened us. Damon lifted his head. You lying parasite. Celeste turned on him. You destroyed us. You signed every document. You deceived me. You wanted the houses. You wanted the jewels. You wanted everyone to envy you. Celeste's mouth opened. Damon smiled bitterly. Do not pretend you were innocent. Victor's voice emerged from the chair. Enough. Neither listened. Celeste pointed at Damon. He forged the will. You introduced me to the handwriting expert. You threatened the nurse. You paid her from mother's account. You told me Ethan would challenge everything unless we destroyed his reputation. You agreed. Their accusations collided. Each word peeled away another layer of family loyalty. There had never been loyalty, only shared appetite. Ethan watched quietly. He did not need to expose them. Desperate people always became honest when the reward for lying disappeared. Victor finally rose. His knees nearly failed. He crossed the hall slowly and stopped before Ethan. I failed you. Ethan's eyes remained cold. Victor swallowed. I should have protected you. You watched. The two words struck harder than shouting. Victor lowered his head. I was weak. You were comfortable. I believed Damon could preserve the family. You believed whatever allowed you to keep drinking. Victor's lips trembled. He looked toward the brandy stain near his chair. I loved your mother. Ethan's expression changed. Not with grief, with disgust. Victor hurried forward. I did. Whatever else you think, I loved her. You let them erase her will. I did not know at first. You knew before they beat me. Victor's face went gray. Ethan stepped closer. You knew when Damon called her signature inconvenient. Victor shut his eyes. You knew when Celeste removed my belongings. His shoulders sagged. You knew when the police entered. A sob escaped Victor. I was afraid of losing everything. Ethan smiled. Victor looked around the ruined hall. Now I have nothing. Ethan's voice remained quiet. You still have your memory. Victor stared at him. That is what you will keep. He turned away. Victor sank to his knees. Not because anyone forced him, because his body no longer understood how to stand. Celeste reached for Ethan's coat. A guard moved. Ethan raised one hand. The guard stopped. Celeste gripped the fabric. You cannot abandon us. Ethan looked at her fingers. She released him at once. We are family, she whispered. The hall became silent. Even Damon looked toward her. Celeste's voice grew urgent. Your mother would not want this. Ethan's smile appeared. It was the same smile he had worn beneath the overpass. Thin, bloodless, terrible. My mother trusted you. You held her hand. I was comforting her. You asked where she kept the original will. Celeste's mouth closed. Lena activated another recording. Celeste's voice filled the hall. Soft, sweet, patient. She was speaking beside a hospital bed. Do not worry. Then came another voice. Ethan's mother. Weak. Exhausted. He must receive everything. Promise me. Celeste answered immediately. I promise. The recording ended. No one moved. Celeste stared at the floor. Ethan crouched before her for the first time. Their faces rested at the same height. You promised. Tears ran down her cheeks. I was confused. You were planning the theft before her body was cold. I can explain. You already did. He repeated her words from the night of the funeral. Ethan, your grief has made you irrational. Celeste recoiled. He continued. Damon is only trying to protect the family. Her breathing broke. Ethan's voice remained calm. Do you remember? She nodded frantically. I am sorry. Say the rest. I do not understand. Tell me what you said when the servants removed my belongings. Celeste sobbed. Ethan waited. She tried to look away. He touched her chin and turned her face back toward him. The gesture was gentle. That made it monstrous. What did you say? Her lips shook. That parasite should be grateful for whatever they are allowed to keep. Ethan released her. And what did you allow me to keep? Celeste collapsed forward. Nothing. The word dissolved into crying. Ethan rose. Correct. Damon watched from across the hall. His fear had changed. At the banquet, he had feared money, then prison, then public disgrace. Now he understood that Ethan had preserved something worse for last. Memory. Every insult remained alive. Every laugh, every kick, every expression worn by the people who thought consequences belonged only to the poor. Damon pulled against his restraints. We can make an agreement. Ethan turned. Damon straightened as much as he could. You are an investor. His voice gained speed. Investors do not waste assets. I know the Harrington network. I know the clients. I know the political contacts. Keep me out of prison and I can work for you. Gabriel looked disgusted. Lena stared at the floor. Ethan walked toward Damon. You want employment? I want a rational arrangement. You called me unemployed. Damon's jaw tightened. That was personal. No. Ethan stopped before him. That was accurate. Damon blinked. Ethan looked toward the chief regulator. Has he been formally removed from every position? Has his personal license been suspended? Yes. Have his accounts been frozen? Yes. Has the estate revoked his residence rights? Gabriel answered. Yes. Ethan looked down at Damon. Then you are still unemployed. A few people near the doorway lowered their eyes. They did not laugh. They were too afraid of enjoying the wrong man's humiliation. You think this makes you better than me? No. You manipulated people. You bought distressed companies. You destroyed everyone who opposed you. Yes. Damon stared. Ethan offered no moral defense. No speech about justice. No claim of purity. He had not returned to prove he was kinder. He had returned to win. Damon's voice cracked. Then we are the same. Ethan tilted his head. You stole from the dying. He gestured toward Northstar's logo on the damaged screen. I invested in what you were too stupid to understand. You trapped me. You chose every trade. You concealed your position. Damon's breathing became frantic. I am your stepbrother. We grew up together. You reminded me every day that I did not belong. I was young. You said it at the funeral. Damon's eyes filled. You were happy. The answer ended him. His shoulders folded. He looked toward Victor. Father. Victor did not raise his head. Help me. Victor covered his face. Damon turned towards Celeste. Mother. She crawled away from him. You struck me. You were attacking me. You ruined everything. You helped me. Celeste shook her head violently. No. No. This was you. Damon stared at her. The final illusion died. His parents would not share his punishment. They would throw him beneath it if they believed doing so might save themselves. He began to laugh. The sound was empty. I did it for this family. Victor looked up. You did it for applause. You gave Ethan's mother everything. She saved us. And I was your son. Victor's eyes closed. Damon screamed. I was your son. The words echoed through the hall. No one answered. Ethan walked to the fireplace. A server had placed a glass of red wine on the mantel. He lifted it. The same guests had once sipped champagne while watching him bleed. Now no guests remained, only debt collectors, officers, auditors, and a family devouring itself at his feet. Ethan tasted the wine. Damon saw him. Hatred returned through the tears. You plan to enjoy this? Yes. You are sick. Ethan looked into the dark red liquid. Perhaps you could have exposed the will immediately. Yes. You could have taken the inheritance back. Yes. Then why? Ethan lowered the glass. Because stolen money can be returned. His gaze moved across the estate. But confidence must be cultivated before it can be harvested. Damon stopped breathing for a moment. Ethan continued, I needed you proud. He glanced toward the broken stage, toward the financial reports, leveraged toward Victor and Celeste. Trusted, then back to Damon, completely unable to imagine defeat. Damon's lips parted. Ethan smiled. You did everything perfectly. The officers approached. Damon began struggling again. No. His chair scraped across the marble. No, listen to me. They lifted him. He kicked at the floor. Ethan, I am sorry. The words came out raw. Damon had never spoken them sincerely in his life. Now he poured them into the hall. I am sorry about the will. The officers dragged him toward the doors. I am sorry about the false accusation. His shoes left black marks on the marble. I am sorry they beat you. He twisted until he could see Ethan. I am sorry about your mother. Ethan's gaze turned glacial. Damon realized too late that he had chosen the wrong wound. He began screaming. I did not kill her. The officer stopped. The entire hall froze. Ethan set down his wine. What did you say? Damon's face became white. Nothing. The system pulsed. Deception. Terror. Hidden knowledge. Ethan walked toward him. The officers held Damon still. You said you did not kill her. I meant the theft. No. Ethan's voice dropped. You were thinking about her death. Damon shook his head. Lena looked at the black case. There was another encrypted folder. Damon screamed at her. Shut up. She flinched, then straightened. I could not open it. Ethan held out his hand. She gave him the drive. The system unfolded around it. Encryption became structure. Structure became weakness. The hidden folder opened. Hospital invoices, medication logs, a payment to the private nurse, a voice recording. Ethan played it. Damon's voice filled the room, speaking as if everything were natural. Celeste screamed. Victor surged from his chair. You killed her. Damon shook violently. She was already dying. Victor struck him once. Then again. Officers pulled Victor away. He collapsed while cursing the son he had protected. Celeste crawled backward until she struck the fireplace. You told me she died peacefully, Damon sobbed. She was changing the trust. She was going to remove all of us. She was sick. She was giving everything to him. He pointed at Ethan. She chose him. There it was. The final truth. Not greed alone. A child's rotten fury inside a grown man's body. Ethan stood completely still. No tears came. Grief had passed beyond tears. The system offered options. Immediate retaliation. Asset penalties. Exposure sequences. Probability models. Ethan dismissed them all. The law could have Damon's body. Ethan already owned everything else. The officers dragged him away. Damon's screams continued across the courtyard. They faded beyond the gates. Celeste and Victor remained beneath the portrait, staring at the empty doorway. Neither asked Ethan for mercy again. They understood there was none. By evening, the estate belonged fully to Vale Meridian. Ethan ordered every Harrington emblem removed. He kept his mother's portrait, nothing else. Victor moved into a supervised care facility funded at the minimum legal standard. Celeste entered a small rented room after every luxury asset was seized. She spent her remaining years reading reports about Vale Meridian's expansion. Each article contained Ethan's name. None contained hers. Damon was convicted on charges of fraud, market manipulation, conspiracy, coercion, and murder. His allies testified against him. His lawyers abandoned him when the money disappeared. The investors who once praised his ruthlessness described him as unstable. He died alone behind concrete walls. No family attended the burial. Northstar became the foundation of a global preservation network. Hospitals no longer lost medicine to failing storage. Farmers no longer surrendered harvests to broken supply chains. Governments negotiated with Vale Meridian carefully. Markets moved when Ethan entered them. Those who called his early acquisitions trash later studied them as miracles. Marcus built, Mira invented. Gabriel guarded the empire's risks. Lena spent her life exposing the kind of hidden crime she had once helped conceal. Ethan remained what suffering had made him: cold, practical, patient. He never spoke about justice. He never called himself a hero. Years later, he sat alone in the highest room of the restored estate. His mother's portrait hung behind him. The city glittered beneath the windows. On his desk rested the original will. He had recovered every asset it named, then multiplied them beyond recognition. The God-tier investor system displayed a final message. Primary revenge objective complete. Would host like to close the record? Ethan looked at Damon's archived portfolio. Every arrogant purchase, every borrowed victory, every step toward ruin. He closed the file. A man who steals an inheritance believes wealth begins with possession. His reflection smiled in the dark glass. He learns too late that ruin begins the same. The end.